When you've made your decision to buy a pup, you'll more than likely be told by the breeder that your pup has been bred for character and temperament. Ask them to explain what this means and what, if any, recourse you have if the information they give you turns out to be incorrect, i.e. your dog turns out to have a problematic temperament after 24 weeks of age. You see, there isn't anybody that can say with any degree of certainty how your dog will turn out from a temperament point of view. This is simply a lottery. The importance of this is that your success with your dog is based in part on your dog's temperament. There are some dogs that come into our lives and they will never cause us any problems, and these make ideal companions. There are some dogs that come into our lives and sometimes their behaviour is fine and sometimes their behaviour drives us mad. And unfortunately, there are some dogs that come into our lives that constantly present us with problems from day one. The dogs that cause us no problems have excellent temperament, and this is simply down to how the dog was born. The dogs that cause us some problems, some of the time, but are okay at other times, have an acceptable temperament, because that's how they were born. And finally, there are the dogs that consistently present problems. And the average pet owner is neither prepared or sufficiently knowledgeable to deal with them. But this is simply the way they were born. Norma Bennett-Wolfe, a renowned and recognised dog trainer, describes temperament as the general attitude a dog has towards other animals and people. And then she goes on to say that temperament is inherited, but can be modified or enhanced by the environment. Which means human involvement or interaction will have a tremendous influence on a dog's behaviour for both good and ill. Understanding what you need to do to influence your dog's temperament is of paramount importance. This is what creates a positive relationship with your dog. There are approximately 10 million dogs in the UK. Each one has its own unique temperament. Now, I define a dog's temperament by the amount of work I have to do with the particular dog. Now, let's see if I can explain and simplify this complex issue with the aid of some graphics. We started off by saying that some dogs come into our lives very calm, genetically calm and relaxed. And the reason for this is that these dogs have very low drive and motivation. So here you can see on the chart, this end of this triangle here, we have low drive and low motivation. And this area here, we have high drive and high motivation. And this line here denotes the dog population. Now, the dog population is either the number of dogs in Liverpool or Manchester or St. Helens or the Northwest or the UK or the world. Here we have this line here, which, as it says, this is a rising drive. So as coming from low drive to high drive, you can see that the distance between these two lines here becomes greater as we travel up the triangle. This depicts how much work we're going to have to do with the particular dog in question. So here's a second diagram, and we have the same triangle here, low drive, high drive, and the same line up here, which is the rising drive and the dog population. Now, the dogs on this side of the line will require less work than the dogs on this side of the line, because these dogs are of lower drive and these dogs are of higher drive. So the next diagram we have is the same triangle with low drive at this end, again high drive at this end, high drive at the top, and this line is the increase in drive for the dog. And this side of the line is less work and this side of the line is more work. Now, a significant feature of dog temperament is that you cannot take a low drive dog and turn it into a high drive dog. And you cannot take a high drive dog and turn it into a low drive dog. Now, the significance of that is if somebody buys a dog for a pet, which the majority of dog owners do, and they inadvertently buy a pet that has a high drive, it will remain highly driven. And because it is highly driven, it will require a lot more work, and if you're not particularly experienced, you're going to struggle to handle it. From low drive to high drive is significant for people who want to get involved in competition sports, because to get in competition sports and do well, you need a dog with lots of drive and lots of motivation. If you buy one that's not got a great deal of drive and not got a great deal of motivation, irrespective of whether it's the breed you want or not, you're not going to succeed. Okay, we have the same triangle and the same connections, low drive here, high drive here, and the line that takes us from low drive to high drive. Now, the issue is, this line here depicts the amount of work that you're going to have to do with the dog. So the higher up this line you go, the more work is required. And if we look at this, the amount of work from between 1 and 10, 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, dogs in this area here will be round about at 1 or 2. Dogs in this area here will be round about 3 or 4, and so on, 6 and 8 down here, and 9 to 10 down here. So the highest amount of work you will have to put into your dog is 10, which is at the highly driven, highly motivated end. The lowest amount of work you'll do is down at this end, which is the low drive and low motivation, and that's between 1 and 2. So finally, we have the last diagram. The last diagram is the same triangle again. So we've got low drive, we've got high drive, and this line up here, again, more drive means more work. So the higher motivated your dog is, the more driven the dog is, the more work the dog is going to require. And if we look here, the amount of work required, again, 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, if we come down to this section of the dog population, that will require work at level 1. This section of dog population will require work at level 2, and so on and so forth. So these numbers here depict the level of work that you're going to have to do with the dog. So what have we learned? All dogs are born with their own individual temperament. They're born on a line from low drive and not much motivation to high drive and lots of motivation. Low drive makes an excellent pet. High drive can make a challenging pet. Low drive dogs require less work. High drive dogs require more work. Now here is the real issue and the importance of understanding temperament. Up to 24 weeks of age, you won't be able to recognize the eventual temperament of your dog. At 24 weeks, hormones kick in, which means there could well be a dramatic change in your dog's behaviour. You could well observe your low drive pup turn into a high drive adolescence, and your high drive pup become a more calm and relaxed dog. This is why people or organisations that have a vested interest in the type of temperament they need wait until the dog is at least 6 months of age before making a decision. This is why some guide dogs pass final assessment and some don't, and why some police dogs achieve operational status and some don't. It's not down to the standard of training, which is exceptionally high in both organisations. It's simply down to the temperament the dog was born with. The critical period in a dog's life is from the age of 5 to 16 weeks. As we discussed previously, this is the most significant period in a dog's development. If you haven't taught your dog how to fit into your lifestyle before the dog is 24 weeks of age, one of two things is going to happen. After 24 weeks, if your dog turns out to have low drive and motivation with a relaxed and amenable temperament, you'll have very few problems. However, if you haven't done the work before 24 weeks of age and your dog turns out to have lots of drive and lots of motivation, you could be in for years of problematic behaviour. It's simple. If you're not prepared to do the requisite amount of work before the dog reaches 24 weeks of age, don't buy a dog. And if you're prepared to do the work that's required, make sure you take your dog to a training facility that has qualified instructors. And don't be shy to ask to see their qualifications.